Okay, well, let me just get started. The book that we're going to talk about tonight is called Baseball Stats and Stories, Confessions of a Tabletop Simulation Gamer. And that would be me. Um, Beginning in 1967, I picked up this hobby with the famous spinner game from Cadico that everybody knows. I can't imagine anyone not knowing about that game. That was designed by Ethan Allen, and you put the player disc in there with the wedges, and one was a home run and seven was a base hit. I still remember it was 1967, and oh, I had a ball with it, but the game had some issues. There weren't any pitchers to speak of. It was just all batters, and there were no team affiliations for the ball players. So I ended up making up teams and making up names, and I put like eight or nine guys together, and I actually played a bunch of games, and then kept all of the statistics in a binder. If you can see behind me over my one shoulder, there are two shelves full of binders. Every one of those represents a score sheet. It is now 8,024 as of right now because I played four games today in 1957 in the 1957 American League. So, but the book tells the story of my burgeoning fandom in the game of baseball, beginning in 1967 when I was introduced to the game by a local friend, and he showed me this game, Catico, and I bought the game, or at least my parents bought it for me. I was 10 years old and played the game and got tired of it. And then I discovered a new game called the Gil Hodges Pennant Fever, which I really liked because now they had rosters and team affiliations. And then I created a season where I played the two Eastern Division teams in the would have been 1970 season. So I played those for 40 games. And then stupidly, I multiplied all the stats by four to come up with a number to equal a full season, which is probably one of the dumbest things ever devised because, players go through ups and downs. And, a guy that had a hot 40 games would be, he'd hit like 9,000 home runs and stuff. So, yeah, that's kind of the way it happened. And then I discovered what I thought to be the finest game to date. I still swear by it. It is a remarkable piece of work. And it was designed with a computer and a couple of computer nerd guys. And that is the Sports Illustrated Major League game, which not only was a great game, but it looked great. And the color coded charts. I mean, I was just in hog heaven with that. And I played a whole bunch of games with that. I could not get my fill of that. I played five major league teams. I just played the entire schedule of five teams. And my best friend, who was not a big baseball fan, was being introduced to the game, and he started playing the game on his own because I made him photocopies off the cuff of some of the teams, but they weren't in color. This pre-color photocopiers. And he started playing some games, and then he said something to me that rocked my world, absolutely changed everything. He said, "Well, why don't you play a full season?" I said, "What are you talking about? It's the 1971 teams that I had at the time." He says, "No, just play all the teams and all the games." So I went and got well, I didn't even have a calculator back then. They weren't even out. I went and got some paper and pencil, and I calculated, well, that's 972 games per league, which makes it 1,800 and whatever, 1,800 and whatever, a gigantic number of games, 1,800 games, plus the playoff and the World Series. And he said, "Yeah, let's just do it." And I said, "What do you mean, let's just do it?" He said, "Well, I'll do it." And I thought to myself, there's no way in the world I'm going to let my friend play a season of baseball who's not even a big fan, and me being, hopelessly devoted to statistics and all kinds of things. And I decided, okay, I'm going to take the plunge. So I basically played three games a day for the better part of a year, and I had my 1971 National League completed. I played the American League. I completed that. I played the playoffs. I played the World Series. And it was absolutely the most, game altering, life affirming thing. I did it as a high schooler. Living here in Punxsutawney, I moved back to Virginia by that afterward. So now I'm back here in Little Groundhog Town, retired, and I can devote all my time to playing games. And I decided that after a while, I'll just design my own game because why not? So the book talks about all of these games and seasons and 8,000 some odd games. It has scores of all of the games, all of the stats, and then the stories. There's voluminous amount of text, literary analysis of the teams, of my own burgeoning fandom, my favorite players, who, by the way, are Roberto Clemente, late of the Pittsburgh Pirates, and a man who just passed away, who I later in life was very fortunate enough to meet and have a nice conversation with, and that's Frank Howard, late of the Washington Senators, Los Angeles Dodgers, Detroit Tigers, and Texas Rangers. A great slugger and absolutely the nicest man that God ever put on this earth. I tell you what, Frank Howard was the guy. Has my undying respect. So anyway, so I designed a game called 80s Baseball because it was 1984 when I designed it. I'd come back from the Air Force from a tour in Japan where I was starving for Major League Baseball that didn't have names like Kawasaki and Taguchi and things like that. So I'm not trying to be racist because I love the Japanese people, but I didn't know the New York Yankees and the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Chicago Cubs. They're just not there. You got the Tokyo Giants and the Yomiuri Giants and the various teams there, but it's a completely different game. They play it a completely different way. The philosophy is all different. I wanted Billy Martin. I wanted Earl Weaver. I wanted, the kind of mix it up every once in a while, the kind of entertainment value. And I was familiar with the teams and the players. And, when I came back, I decided to use a Commodore 64. I wrote out a little basic program that had some formulas in it, and I designed a game that has basically everything that you can imagine happen in a game, including rainouts, player ejections, and all kinds of oddities, triple plays. And the book covers all of it. It covers every single season, every single game. And I've subsequently played a whole bunch of games and a whole bunch of replay seasons where I play the entire schedule. So that's what I do. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I wanted to interject a couple things while they're
Sure,
fresh in my mind here.
sure.
Commodore 64. I don't know if you can see in my background, but I've got a Commodore 128, a
Oh
Commodore
my
Amiga,
gosh, I
and a
do see it.
C64.
Yeah,
Yes.
yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I used the
So
Commodore to create a basic program which calculated based on my formulas. The problem with it was, to the time frame now, excuse me, is that I could only put in the stats for one player at a time and spit out the rating. I don't do player cards. I don't do those types of things. What I do is one sheet of paper handles the entire team. Every rating, everything that goes on in the game comes off the player card or the main charts, which is the game engine, and then all the base running things and all of that added in. So, excuse me, it's very simple. It's delivered by PDF, but the stats are really remarkably accurate on a macro scale. The guys that hit home runs will hit home runs. The guys that don't, the Scribini players, they're not going to hit the home runs and stolen bases and all that. It all factors in, and it depends on how you manage. And so, about 2 or 3 years ago, as I was now retired 5 years, I met a guy who was a computer whiz And I asked him, could you create this formula for me? And and then I could, I can create more teams. So the '80s baseball concept has all 260 teams from the 1980s, all those seasons. But I wanted more. I wanted 1927. I wanted 1908. I wanted some Negro League action. I wanted some other things. And he said, "Well, let's do it on a spreadsheet." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, if you can plug the numbers into this spreadsheet, it will calculate based on your formulas." And I go, "Oh my gosh." So we spent about 6 or 8 sessions, about 3, 4 hours a piece, to fine tune it. And I use baseball reference, and I dump the stuff in there, and it creates the charts, and then I'm off to the race. It takes about 1 hour per team, but I'm still able to do it. And the game is available. I think there's now 11 other seasons altogether. Teams from 1886. I've got 1908, 1917, 27, 34, 41, 48, 51, 57, 65, and all the teams of the 1980s. And then I have a World Series pack, so you could get, about, I don't know, 12, 14 teams for the one price. They're all available on pocolpress.com, www.rhymes with local, POCOL press.com, both the game and the book. And Amazon handles the book as well. So
you mentioned Frank Howard.
I love baseball so much, I'm almost drowning in it. I mean, I played 4 games today between two really bad teams, the Kansas City Athletics and the Washington Senators from 1957. Kansas City won all 4 games too. And even bad teams and bad games, I just groove into all of this stuff. And again, I keep all the stats. It's very, very detailed. Injuries, rainouts, everything, pitching rotations. It's all compiled, and all of it's in the book as well.
So, are you still tracking the stats by hand?
Oh, absolutely. I would not consider tracking stats by computer. It's a tremendous joy for me to track the stats on a game by game basis. I put the score sheet down and I go, well, let's see, Ted Williams went 2 for 4. And I've got my column. Well, let's see, he had 322 at bats. He's hitting 390, and he has I don't know, 100 and whatever hits, and so on. And so every game I'm putting in that 2 for 4. I'm getting Jackie Jensen. I'm getting Ted Lepsio. I'm getting Jimmy Pearsall. I'm getting Frank Malzone. That's the 57 Sox, by the way. And, Frank Sullivan was a pitcher, Tom Brewer, and so on. So all the stats are done game by game. And it's a real joy of keeping the stats for me, too. I even wrote a small little mini book of how I calculate the stats and how important it is to create pitching rotations and track injuries and errors and how to do all of that. That's a little 50-page book that tells you how to do that, or at least how I do it. I wouldn't consider a computer for any of that stuff. That's part of the joy of tabletop for me, calculating the stats by hand.
Are you playing the as played lineups, or
No, I don't play as played lineups.
Are you setting them?
I pick the lineups for both teams based on trends and what I think. I have there's a standard lineup for the team, but there's wide variation. I'm very much a platoon type of a manager for most of the teams that I play. And the Yankees are out in front in 57. They were that year too. They lost the World Series in 7 games to the Braves with Hank Aaron and Eddie Matthews. But yeah, I just keep track of everything by hand.
I gotta know who won that season where you replayed the 1900 games.
Well, incredibly, if you're talking about 1971, that was one of my favorite seasons because growing up, I was a Pittsburgh Pirates fan with Roberto, and the Pirates won the National League, and the Baltimore Orioles had two 20-game winners and I think two 18-game winners. So they came very close to having the four 20-game winners. They played an absolutely stunning World Series, which was decided in the 12th inning, thanks to uh, a base hit by I believe it was Jose Pagan, but he got a hit in the 12th inning, and it was a scoreless game up until the 12th inning. And of course, that was played with the Sports Illustrated game. And one of the things about creating these or playing these games and creating the games, I'm able to do it now because I'm divorced, I live alone. But even back when I was a kid, I would go into my room, I'd close the door. My parents probably thought I was nuts, but I would literally start screaming and, doing some sort of faux play by play. And, this is this and this is that. And I'm screaming, oh my God, and it's a this and it's a that, and it's a home run and it's a 3-2 in the bottom of the ninth. I was just, and my parents must have thought, we need to think about a straitjacket for this young man. They probably thought I was daft, but that's okay. That's how I spent my childhood. And then there were various times when I played the games, as John Lennon once said famously, life happens when you're busy making other plans. So I haven't played games for 50 some years. I've had stretches where I played a lot of games. And then, I was married and I have a couple of daughters, and I was in the Air Force and so on. So I went to college. There were times when I wasn't playing any games. So bless you.
I've got a quick Frank Howard story since you mentioned
Go ahead.
Hondo.
Yeah.
My father and I used to travel down to Florida every February for the Daytona 500,
Wow.
and we stayed at his friend's place. The Yankees were training in Tampa, I think, at the time,
Right.
and we go over there. I was trying to get autographs, and we're watching practice, or I think it was just a practice, and I turned around looking for my father. He had found that Frank Howard was over by the clubhouse, and this was one of his favorite players growing up.
Oh.
Next thing I know, he struck up a conversation with him, and he was chatting with him for the next, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes. So
that's how he is. That's how he was.
Yeah, just a great guy. So that was, one of those cool things you don't expect to be able to, maybe you get an autograph and you get to say something to your favorite player for 10, 15 seconds, but the fact that he sat there and, in the middle of what he was doing and just had a conversation with my dad was really neat.
Yeah, I include several Frank Howard stories about my personal meeting with him at a SABR event many, many years ago, and the rather incredible reaction that he had to a conversation that I was having with him. And also the book has, dozens, well, hundreds of stories of things like that, personal reminiscences or oddball events that took place in baseball. Gabby Street comes to mind. Does anybody know the story of Gabby Street, the catcher with the Washington Senators way back in the turn of the century?
I know the name.
But, the name Gabby Street. He was not a very good player, not a very good hitter.
No, he got a great name though.
Yeah, great name. But Gabby Street on a bet was asked to put on his catcher gear and catch a ball off the Washington Monument.
Oh, I've heard that story.
And he stood under there bravely, and the ball was dropped 12 times, and he missed 12 times. But
well, the wind probably took it, right?
Well, yeah, of course. It's 560 feet, the Washington Monument. It's the tallest building in D.C. by law. And they dropped the ball, and he finally caught it on the 13th try. So stories like that, because he played in my 1908 replay season with the Senators. I brought in that story, and there's just so many others that I bring in as a result of, I see the name, I see a guy recently that made the 1941 charts that I did, a very, very obscure pitcher. His name was, and I'm not making this up, his name was Emil Bill Dilly. And of course, his nickname was, can you guess it? You can guess it.
What was his last name?
Billy.
Emil, E-M-I-L, and his last name was Bill Dilly.
Bill Gilly. Hillbilly Bill Gilly?
Hillbilly Bill Dilly,
Yep.
of course. What else? What other name would he have?
Well, one of the things I miss.
You get crazy stuff like that. And I was at the Max Scherzer no-hitter a few years ago against the Pirates in Washington, the near perfect game where Scherzer actually hit the 27th batter of the game, and it was a guy named Tabata, Jose Tabata, who dropped his elbow down. He looked like he was Robo player because he had on all this gear, looking like Barry Bonds, and he got roasted for this particular ethical lapse. And Mr. Tabata never played again in the major leagues. I always thought, I didn't know that at the time, but the Pirates released him like 3 or 4 days later. That was back when Clint Hurdle was the manager. They released Tabata. I think he was signed by another major league team, but he never played again in the major league.
He might be the only player ever to get to end a no-hitter, a perfect game, and never play again. I mean,
I guess so. So that story's in there. My story of just watching this no-hitter and the incredible events surrounding being in the outfield bleachers, and all the Pirate fans in the gear. The Pirate fans traveled all the way from Pittsburgh to see this series, and it was incredible. I mean, I'm sitting up there, literally peeing my pants, and all these guys are right down below near the fence, and near the outfield fence. And I can hear them. One guy goes, "I hope he gets it. I hope he gets it. I know I'm a Pirates fan, but I hope he gets it." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is insane." So, I mean, they're cheering against their own team, but, they wanted the chance to see a perfect game, to see a no-hitter. And that's the thing that's so incredible about baseball, about this communal type thing that's organic sometimes. It just kind of springs out, and it's so fascinating. And as it turned out, Tabata got hit. He went down to first base, and I have never heard louder boos in a baseball park in my life. I mean, they roasted that umpire and the whole fact that he allowed this play, because he could have said, "No, you're out." He could have made that call.
Did he not move? Did he not try to get out of the way?
He dropped his elbow down into the pitch. And see him in the video. That should be his day. And as it turned out, Mr. Tabata never played again. Now, the next guy came up and hit a deep fly ball. That was Starling Marte, who hit a deep fly ball to a guy named Michael E. Oh, my goodness. What was his name? He's with Kansas City now, I believe. Michael A. Taylor hit a ball and it was right in front of us, and he snagged it, right near the warning track. That could have been an extra base hit and would have spoiled the no-hitter. But he got the no-hitter, and right after that, all the players came out, of course, like they normally do. And at that particular season, the Nats celebration included chocolate syrup. So they took his hat off and they put the chocolate syrup down his Oh, it's just so classic. But
it's just getting more and more elaborate, isn't it?
Yeah.
The celebrations are getting more and more elaborate.
A bunch of adults get together and just act like, like 5-year-olds for 2 or 3 hours. It's just great. That's the great thing about baseball. You're not going to get that in football. You're not going to get that in basketball, but you will get that. And you won't get it in hockey either. you do get it in baseball from time to time. That's one of the great things about the sport.
Mike's put up a question in the chat. He's wondering what board game brands would you recommend just getting back into after playing SI's game as a kid?
Well, obviously, I would recommend my own game. I mean, I just started this as a commercial venture. 80s baseball is a great game, and it's no frills. But the game I would recommend the most, and I've never played Strat and I've never played APBA. So for all those fans out there that are really into those two classic games, but I highly recommend the Sports Illustrated, the original Sports Illustrated game from 70, 71, 72. And they have revamped that. A guy named Dom Brav has turned that into a digital version only. And he's done some updates to it. I highly recommend the Sports Illustrated game. And also, the other game that I played that I really did like a lot has also been updated. The original Gil Hodges Pennant Beaver game has been updated now to everyday player baseball, which is a pretty darn good game, and it has stadium designs where the ball is hit so far in different stadiums and can be a home run in one park and a long out in another park. So they've done a really good job. I think it's a husband and wife team that took that over and probably obtained the copyrights and have updated more teams and things over the years. And it's a really good value. So both of those games I really, really like. But I've played my own, some 3,000, 4,000 some odd games now and keep all the stats. And it's remarkably fascinating. And from a macro scale, it is quite accurate. But again, everything depends on how you manage the teams and the pitchers and all of that. So lineups and whatnot. So
I came in late. You take all your stats manually in a notebook?
I do, and I had a good little comment about that. Just to reiterate, I do them manually. I refuse to use a computer because I think doing the stats is part of the fascination with baseball, to see from one game to the next. You grab a score sheet. Let me just show you some of the score sheets. This is from 1937. I did this last year. 1937 Negro National League. I don't know if you can see it, but that's Josh Gibson there. And so the first game here was the Homestead Grays. That's who were.
Oh, that's my part of the world.
And this is 1937, and they played against the Pittsburgh team. And there is just an example of a score sheet. I don't know if I can show it to you enough here.
Was Josh Gibson on that team?
Yes, Josh Gibson was on
my
that.
My dad saw him play. I grew up in the Pittsburgh area, and my dad saw him play.
Well, he was
really
an astounding power hitter. Astounding. He would make Babe Ruth roll over in his grave, honestly. So anyway, just to follow up on Gibson, he hit in that season 417. He hit 417, which is an extremely high batting average. Now, they only played about 50, 60 games because of the finances and the racism and all of that. They only played a couple months during the year in 37 and many of the other seasons. And Gibson, for my replay, again, I played all the games for him. He hit 431, and he had 27 home runs in 56 games. I mean, he just was a dynamo.
And he was probably not a young man at that time either. He played.
Yeah, I mean, again, one of these athletes dying young, just a terrible story. Here is the book. I don't know if you can see it or not here, but the cover is the 1908 Cubs stats as I played them.
So was that the season they took their own lights with them? I think they played a lot of night games. Didn't they take their own light system?
Well, I don't think so, because it was, I think, only in Cincinnati in 1938, I think it was, where the first night game.
Well, I know, but these were portable lights. I think they took portable lights. I think they had a light system they took with them on a trailer.
I could be talking about 1937. 1937 Negro Leagues you're talking about?
Well, I know
Oh,
what
I thought
season.
you were talking about 1908.
Oh, no, 1937.
Okay, that I don't
Oh,
know.
1908. No, that would have been quite
Yeah,
a
that I
feat.
don't know. I mean, that is entirely possible. But considering the finances of these Negro League teams, I mean, they struggled
Yeah,
really
they did.
mightily. They only had a couple of places that were really into playing the games. I think Forbes Field was one, and Washington's Griffith Stadium was another, where they could freely play games and draw crowds, a lot of crowds, and a lot of Caucasian gentlemen went to see their games, and they held their own. They played pretty much 500 ball against major league teams in exhibitions. These guys could play. I'm telling you, they
Yeah,
could
good.
play.
Sure.
And in fact, they were so good that I played some 200 odd teams over the 50 some years that I played tabletop. The best team I've ever played is the 1937 Kansas City Monarchs, who in 56 games went 43-13. I mean, they're just unbeatable. They won, I think, their last 13 or 14 and like 18 out of the last 20 to close the season. They just lapped the field.
Was
And
Satchel Paige on that team? Was that
no,
Satchel Paige team?
Page was
No.
not on that team. I'll tell you who was on that team. It was
Buck Ewing? Buck Ewing, I think.
no, Buck. You're thinking of not Buck Ewing. Buck Ewing was a player with the
Buck somebody. Buck somebody.
yes. Hold
Buck
on, I'll
Leonard.
tell you the
Leonard.
actual players here. I'll just look it up. There was a Buck,
Buck
but it wasn't
O'Neill?
Ewing.
Buck
No,
Leonard.
it wasn't Buck O'Neill. It was
Somebody
a
just said Buck.
slugger first
Leonard.
baseman. Let me get that.
Yeah.
He was
Here we go.
Yeah, I
Here
think
we-
by then Buck O'Neill went into like managing the league and that kind of stuff. He had a
Buck
lot of
O'Neill.
vision. He had a
Yeah,
lot
that
of vision.
guy
Yeah,
that
he
you're
was a
talking
real
about
spokesman, I
is
know, for the league.
they had Willard Brown was their top player, and their top pitcher was a guy named Andy Cooper. And Hilton Smith was a very good player. But the Buck you're talking about was on the Homestead Grays, and he was, here we go. Let's see. He played with Gibson. Buck Leonard is the Buck you're talking
somebody
about.
said that.
Yeah, Buck Leonard. Okay.
Somebody
Yeah,
said that.
Kevin had it.
And he only hit 368 in my league, 368. 22 homers, 52 RBIs, and that's in 60 games.
Oh, they only had rosters of about 15 or 16, if I remember
The
right.
rosters were pared down, and I used that formula in the game of 80s baseball too. So I kind of mirrored the major leagues roster sizes. In the early part of the century, they were much smaller than they are today, which I think they're up to like 30. So I put 30 guys on a team in the 1980s. So there's 15 basic players. There's 3 substitute players that my rules say you only can bring them in for injuries or at the end of the year call-ups. And then there's 10 pitchers and 2 reserve pitchers, minor league type pitchers. So same type rules. But the earlier teams did have much more diminished rosters. And that's challenging when you're playing tabletop because your guy gets hurt, and then what do? I mean, you got these guys that they're playing out of position if they're playing at all. So
there was a case sometime in the dead ball era where the catcher got injured and the other catcher got injured. The opposing manager said, "Hey, it's all right. Put the other guy back in." Now, they didn't have 3 catchers, which was usually the case back then. So,
right, they did not.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Len Cicada?
Oh,
He was a
sure.
fielder with the Orioles way back in the day, and Orioles, I think, with a couple other teams. But in 1983, at the end of the season, they were playing Toronto in Baltimore, and couple of their catchers got hurt. They put Len Cicada in the game, and Tippy Martinez came into pitch. He was a relief pitcher, and Martinez picked off 3 guys off first base in one. And Len Cicada didn't have much to do, which was good for him.
That's a great story.
Collins, I think, was one of the first guy to get picked off. The Toronto team, pardon Mr. Wedling there, but the Toronto team were pretty good speedsters back in '83. They had some really good players. Yeah. George Bell and I forget the other guy's name, but they had some power hitters and some fast runners, and the Orioles ended up winning that game, I think, in 10 innings, and that was a big game for them to help them win the pennant and subsequently the World Series.
They had like Damaso Garcia,
fought an infielder by trade.
Right? Damaso Garcia, Lloyd Mosby.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had several guys. Alfredo Griffin.
Right, but there was another big slugger too, and I can't think of his name.
Barfield, Jesse Barfield.
Barfield, right? Played for the Yankees later, but yeah, Jesse Barfield and Bell were quite a combination in those early '80s.
Was Dave Stieb on that team?
He was.
Dave Stieb?
Yes, he was.
One of my favorite pitchers, and his record never seemed to indicate his ability for some reason.
Yeah,
he had that great slider, one of the great sliders ever.
He was a very, very solid pitcher for many years for Toronto.
Yeah, he was, but I never liked him. I liked Jimmy Key a lot better.
Jimmy Key was good. He was a soft tosser.
Thought Jimmy Key was underrated in the Jays. You got to remember, '83. That's only 2 years removed from when they made the playoffs the first time. In '85.
Right.
Which there was, I think that was the year Kansas City won, and there was some suggestions. I don't think it was ever confirmed, but that was the game where I think George Brett hit the home run that pretty much ended it in Game 5. Well, the rumor was that the grounds crew had actually brought the fences in a little bit more than they were supposed to help.
Wait, man, nobody noticed that?
Well, I don't think it was like 10 feet or anything, but it was a bit. And that was one of the rumors back in the day. But
we always had rumors out here that I grew up in Pennsylvania, but I'm a Twins fan, that they would turn the fans on when the Twins are batting, so it was blowing out, then turn it off. And Billy Martin swore up and down that they were doing that. You couldn't prove it.
Yeah.
But hey, home field advantage, right? Why not?
Well, Billy Martin managed the Twins actually in
1969.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So he kept getting into too many fights.
You want to talk about field stuff? Look up John McGraw. I mean,
yes.
He did some wonderful things, and the book that came out a couple of years ago, Mark, and I can't think of the other person. I could picture him. Both SABR executives had written, talk about the different cheating and stuff, and I think they could have given McGraw his own chapter. Quite the individual.
Yeah,
before the turn of the century,
he's a really interesting character, John McGraw. Even in his playing days, he was really, really something else. Really something else.
So was he part of that Baltimore team that?
Yes, he was. Yes,
he was. Yeah, they should grab people's belts.
They had a trick that they would do. They would hide a ball in the outfield grass.
Keep the grass high so it would hide the ball.
If it occurred, if a ball was hit to the outfield where they could not catch it or get to it, and the guy was going to get an extra base hit, they might throw in the fake ball. Well, they did that one time, but 2 balls came into the infield, and the umpires obviously noticed the ruse, and that kind of ended that. But yeah, John McGraw, Comiskey. This is my other baseball books, Misfits, the worst baseball team ever, the Cleveland Spiders, and the Chris Vonder biography has all kinds of stories of the hijinks and craziness that went on in the 1880s and 90s, which is really a fascinating time. I wish there were more books done on the 80s and 90s.
There was also a fielder, and I don't know who it was, but with the Cubs, who would go in and plant at the beginning of the season once the ivy started to bloom and stuff. Would hide a bunch of balls, a bunch of balls out in the ivy.
Love it.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, then there's the old potato ball trick. Have you heard of that one?
Oh, right.
Take a potato out to shortstop. And in those days, the game started at 4 o'clock, and by the time it was 6:30 or 7, it started to get a little dark. So he'd throw the potato and throw it over the first baseman's head, and then there was the ball, and he would tag the guy out at shortstop. I mean, I'm not saying I miss those. What I do miss are the nicknames from those days. They're
great nicknames.
Like Hillbilly Bill Philly, or that guy.
Hillbilly Bill Dilly, yeah. He's great. He's classic.
Everybody had a nickname.
Everybody had a nickname, especially in the early part of the century and before. They all had nicknames. And as I'm playing my games, because I'm in a game 422 of the 1957 American League. The 18 leagues have 616 games, so you can knock them out. You play 3 games a day, you can knock them out in a few months, which is what I do. That's what I do all day long. I play games. And when I'm not writing, the text for stuff, I'm playing the games, figuring the stats. And that's how this book germinated. It came as a result of me stumbling into my garage one day and finding all these score sheets and going, I did that? Did I do it? And then I started compiling them. And when I started to do it, I couldn't stop. And then I said, there's a story here. There's some kind of stuff going on. So I wrote about not only the teams, but about the formats and critical analysis of Catico and of Gil Hodges and of Sports Illustrated and the various games that I played over the years, including my own. I even crack on my own game. I have critical analysis on my own game. So, but it's all fun. And, I don't have anyone yelling at me all day long, like honeydew weekends, mow the lawn, do this, clean the dishwasher, fix this clog, do this. I don't have that. So I just do this all day long.
Okay, by the way, I have your book coming on the way.
Oh, great. Thank you.
I don't know why it's taking so long. I ordered it on Sunday. It's not going to get here until Thursday, so I don't know where it's coming from. Is it self-published?
Well, yes and no. The company that I run, it's called Pokal Press, and that's the other job that I sort of had. I have my own company, and I did publish it under their banner. So I did not get a publisher for this particular book. So in that regard, it is self-published, but Amazon takes care of all of that. Plus, you can get it on my own website, which is pokalpress.com.
I'm waiting for the Audible version.
Oh, there is no Audible version.
I know. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, yeah. I know that.
Yeah, and for obvious reasons, because there's just so many stats, but there's a lot of text in the book as well. A lot.
Well, if I had an award for Nerd of the Year, baseball Nerd of the Year, buddy, I think you'd be in the running. I've not, what did you say? How many game sheets you got? Like 8,000?
As of today, I have 8,024 games played. Now that's over a lifetime. So since 2020, since the pandemic started, I really ramped up my playing. But when I was married and having kids and going to college, all this stuff, obviously I wasn't playing games or inventing games or any of that kind of stuff. But so I did it in like 3 or 4 different major spurts of time. And right now I'm in one of those spurts of time because I'm unencumbered.
So when you have a special event, perfect game, 4 home runs or whatever,
I have 14 no-hitters.
You set those aside or you keep them in with everything else?
Let me show you. Here are, I don't know if you saw this before, but this is one of the binders.
No, I came in a little late.
Earlier. They're not set aside, but the book documents all of the no-hitters. There's been 14 no-hitters. And so they would be in the binder, and I keep track of the game number so I could go back to the score sheet and look at any one of these particular games to see it. Now, the score sheets are not included in the book. Otherwise, it would be 8,000 pages. So the book is the summation of the statistics and the literary analysis of the teams, the games, the seasons, the replays. I call a replay when I play all of the games in a season, and I call a season just, random games where I had a bunch of different teams and I played X amount of games in the schedule. Before I had the idea that I would try to play the entire schedule, which I've done on now numerous occasions, and I won't do anything other than play the entire schedule. I don't do projects. Projects are not my thing. It's you play them all. That's it. So,
got a couple of questions in the chat from Ken. You create your own lineups. Do you try to use the players realistically, or do you let Hurricane Hazel just go nuts in 1957?
Well, that's a good question, and the answer is when I create the team. I have two ways really to create the team as I'm doing it from my from Baseball Reference and my spreadsheet tool. I look at some of the teams I create where I have first baseman, second baseman, shortstop, third baseman, and so on, the basic players in that same order. And I put the reserve players in italics so you know that those are guys that didn't play as much. So you can kind of look at some of them and go, oh, well, they didn't play as much. That means that I'm not going to play Hurricane Hazel because he hit like, 407 or something in 57. And, every other time he got up, he hit a home run, that kind of thing. So I'm aware of the outlier type players like Bob Hayes, that kind of thing. The other thing is the other type of chart that I create them where the first players are alphabetical, or the players are alphabetical, and then you can sort of manage it from there. But the charts that first base, catcher, and so on, those guys there, those top guys are the top players of the team, the regular players, and then underneath them, I know that those are the guys that don't get into as many games. So I try to manage them in a way so that you don't play the outliers like Hurricane Hazel, 150 games because, the guy he'd hit 80 home runs, that kind of thing. He'd be Barry Bonds,
He also commented that the Monarchs had their own portable lighting system starting in 1930.
Yeah, I
wow.
thought. Yeah,
did not know that.
It was just one thing. Yeah, it was a trailer or something. They carry it around on a trailer. I think I've seen photos of it.
Yeah.
Probably wasn't the greatest lighting system in the world, but it allowed them to work. A lot of these guys probably work during the day. They had a chance to and play at night. Of course, if they're on the road a lot,
I don't really know if that would suffice as a night game. I think it might have been helpful during a dusky type environment because most of the major league teams at that time started games at 2:00. Now, I don't know that for a fact. I'm just guessing. But when a game starts at 2:00 back in the day, they would play maybe to 4:00. And if they were playing in the 1800s, 19th century ball, they would play the game, and sometimes it would be 3:30. It would start to get dusky. And in the case of the Cleveland Spiders, the worst baseball team ever to play, many times they would say, oh, the Spiders had to leave because they had to catch a train. I mean, they were losing like 14-2, but they had to catch a train. So they play 7 innings. And that's the way a lot of the games were conducted. There was no codification of the rules. It was just kind of catch as catch can, and things happened where they would put dunk some cabbage or some lettuce in water for hot days. And then they put it on the top of their head and put their hat there. And so, they would have a natural air conditioning sort of. do that a lot, and many other things where the third baseman would grab the belt buckle loop of a guy trying to tag up, and all kinds of hijinks that went on because of John McGraw. Charlie Comiskey was really good at that, and it's just a fascinating era.
Well, I don't know how anybody could be an umpire in those days.
Oh, the umpires!
Play an
my
umpire.
gosh.
Took his life in his
About an
hands.
umpire. If you have time for this one, this is a fantastic umpire. So back in the 1899 season, when the Cleveland Spiders had basically no chance to win a game, they went into Louisville one night, or I'm sorry, one day. Went into Louisville. Then the night before, there was an electrical storm in Louisville. Now, all the ball, there were no stadiums back then. This 1899, they were parks, and they were all wood. All the wood was, covered all of the grandstands. And anyway, so much of the right field periphery, the stands on the right field side, first baseline, were fire damaged, so people couldn't sit there. So they were playing this one game against the Cleveland Spiders, and the Spiders had this poor sap named Charlie Hemphill, I believe, playing the right field. And the Louisville player hit a ball down the line, and there were people actually sitting on the field of play, because as we know, when people are in a gathering, they tend not to play by the rules necessarily. The foul lines, again, kind of haphazard, and there was only one umpire or two at the best. And anyway, the ball went down the line, and the Louisville Courier-Journal quote, and I'm going to read you the exact quote because I've memorized it. Richie hit an ordinary double along the right field line. The Spiders outfielder chased after it, but a big fat man sat down on it and wouldn't get up until Richie had made a circuit of the bases. It was certainly a clear home run. That is what the Courier-Journal reported. And that's the kind of stuff that would go on in the 1890s. You get this nonsensical stuff. And Spiders protested, but that fell on deaf ears. And the guy got a, what would you call that? An inside the ass home run? I don't know. Under the rear end home run. But yes, you can look it up. It really happened. So, but the owners of these teams were very, very dependent on a crowd coming into a game. And if people were sitting on the field, so be it. They need the butts in the seats, because there's no TV, there's no radio, there's no baseball cards, there's no other revenue sources other than a butt in the seats, or maybe, some beer sold by the glass.
Well, yeah, I've seen pictures, probably of the World Series, of fans ringing the outfield. And it really gives you an idea of how shallow these players play, because the ball didn't go very far. I don't think there were more than 350 feet in center field from home plate. And they're 8-10 feet deep.
Absolutely.
And I don't know what they paid for those tickets, but the wooden stands, they burned down all the time.
They did.
Every couple 3 years, they burned down.
One of the guys, when I was first researching my book, Misfits, a guy named Dave Kelly at the Library of Congress, he said, there's one thing you need to learn about 19th century baseball. And I said, what's that? He said, all the teams had fire insurance. I said, oh, yeah. And you can get the fire insurance maps and see, how the local fire companies were very much a part of a Major League Baseball team. They had to be on standby many, many times, because if a guy, takes a cigar, or, back in the days, they really didn't have cigarettes manufactured as we do today. But if they take a cigar and they throw it into, a tarp or something, you don't know. Weird stuff happens, and weird stuff did happen. And, that gate receipt was all important to have the butts in the seats.
So what was the first modern stadium then? Would it have been Forbes Field
Well,
was
I'm
built
guessing
in
it would have been
1809.
now Wrigley Field was it was Weegham Park back in the
Yeah,
day.
that was,
Tiger Stadium was I think Briggs Stadium or something. That would have been about 1912, 14, somewhere in that ballpark.
Forbes
I
Field
want
was
to say the first steel was Forbes Field in Shibe Park.
It could well be
Was the
Forbes
first
Field, yeah,
steel.
because Forbes Field I think came in like 1908 or 9 or somewhere around that
1909,
time
I think.
frame.
But that
Saw
was
a lot of
considered a
games
big
there. Nice
advancement.
little
Steel
stadium.
was considered a big advancement.
Yeah, those were the girders, the steel structures for the
Yeah.
first time when they started building those.
But see, that was the big reason it was a big deal, was burning down, because that was, like you say, that was. I mean, seriously, they had some major fires. Luckily, they didn't usually have fatalities. People could leave before the fire got big, but there was a lot of burnt down ballparks. Yep.
Yeah.
They were, in fact.
Tom, I was going to
I
ask
think,
you, because you mentioned having 1908 as one of your seasons.
Yes.
Have you, when you replayed that, did you have a tight pennant race like the? I mean, that's generally considered famous for being the
Yes, that's a
tightest
very
pennant race.
famous season.
Yep.
Mr. G.H. Fleming wrote about that book, wrote about that in his book, The Unforgettable Season. And a recent book is called Crazy Eight by Kate
Yep,
Murphy.
I have that one.
A great book, very colorful. I met Kate Murphy at a SABR event. But, the pennant race did not come out as close as I thought it would. However, the races were really interesting for several reasons. In the National League, where the Cubs were fighting with the Giants and the Pirates that year for real
We're
life,
very close. They were very close.
very close. They were like within a game and a half at the final. What happened was when I did the replay, Mathewson got hurt for 35 games, and that was
no.
a massive blow
Yeah.
to the Giants' chances.
They didn't have many. They didn't have many
For
starters.
That's
some
11 or 12
reason, they
starts.
had 4 first basemen. Their roster's really first base heavy, and none of them were any good. And so they really could have used another outfielder that could hit. Their outfielders did not fare well. So as it turned out, Chicago won the pennant in that league. But when the Tigers played, they had a big lead about 2 weeks to go in the season. And the St. Louis Browns came from 7th place all the way to 2nd place and ended up only 6 games back. So, but the World Series was absolutely beyond compare. It went 7 games, and the Cubs won on a Tiger error by Germany Schaefer, the shortstop. He led the league in errors that year with 60 in the replay.
Well,
so he made a very critical error in the late innings, and that's how the Cubs won it.
As I understand it, in those days, it was notable in the sports article if there were no errors in the game. Hey, an errorless game.
Well, like you say, the shortstop, second basemen were good for 60, 50, 40.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really
much
those three,
so
third
today.
baseman too,
yep.
would make up a lot of errors. And to me, thinking about it, it's probably not just the gloves, which were basically no bigger than the hand, right. But you have to think probably the fields were real rough.
The fields were
not
so
well
bad.
manicured. Yeah.
You had guys like Pebbly Jack Glasscock, who was a
and there's a reason he was
because
Pebbly.
He could field a ball coming off those crazy, angles, and he got a nickname out of that. But yes, the fields were very ruddy, and they didn't have these modern, implements that could, clean all that stuff off. They didn't have grounds crews for sure, and it was catch as catch can.
I think the players probably did their own grounds grooming.
They probably did. They probably did. And I understand that Glasscock was a guy that actually went out and tried to pick off those pebbles before the game started. So that's probably how he got his nickname as well. So just a great era to research and write about and, read about.
Is it ever? And it was such an odd time. There were no announcers. They didn't have names on their back. Everybody just knew who they were because you saw
everybody knew who they were. Absolutely, they did.
Announce everything. I would love, of all players, I'd like to go back and see Honus Wagner play.
Oh my
He
gosh.
must have
I
been
tell you,
a force of nature.
he was, well, in my replay, Honus Wagner literally dominated the entire National League.
In
He
1908.
led the
Oh,
league
yeah.
in batting. He led the league in actually he
Everything.
had the Triple Crown.
Yeah.
He
Tell you
had
everything.
Yeah, he had the Triple Crown for my replay. He was so impossible to get out. He could steal bases, he could hit home runs. I mean, he would just, you know, he just dominated the season.
Well, that's not to mention his
Key
defense.
player in the season. He did win the batting title with a 340 mark.
Oh, I think his OP, his
Great ball player.
OPS was like 240 or something. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, he was a tremendous player, and he was a coach for the Pirates for for the rest of his life, pretty much, after he retired. So
Okay, I want to set you gentlemen all straight. The oldest baseball park is in London, Ontario, Canada. It was 1878. It's still standing. It's called Labatt Park, and it's where the intercounty team plays, which is, I don't know, probably I would equivalent it to maybe A, sometimes double A ball level. It was also the home of the double A London Tigers and of some single A ball, the London Werewolves, and I think there was another one. But
the London Werewolves,
it
I love
is
that.
the oldest ballpark. And down the street in a place called Beachville is the argued first recorded baseball game in North America in
Wow.
Beachville, Ontario. Now,
Who knew?
you can disagree all you want, and I'm not going to fight you, but
Well, we were not talking about first ballpark. We were talking about first steel structure when they
there's
came
steel
in.
there.
Oh, it was.
Wow.
Yeah, behind the home plate. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's steel and
Was it
and
built that
Everybody's still
way?
standing.
yeah, yeah, it's still
Oh, really?
standing. Well, I think they've done renovations over years,
Yeah.
but it is still standing. And like I said, there's a team that still plays out of there,
Fantastic.
and it's a
The
beautiful little ballpark.
the early nicknames of teams were just absolutely classic, how they were designed and created. Um, there was a team in Rochester, New York that played for 1 year, parts of a year, maybe. I think it was 1884. Has anyone heard of the Rochester Hop Bitters? Probably not,
Hop
right?
Bitters?
So the Hop Bitters, now, again, I'm not making this stuff up, but in my research, I found that the owner of the Rochester Hop Bitters was he was a cough drop magnate, back in the day. He manufactured cough drops, and the name of his cough drop was the Hop Bitters, right? Because it was made of hops and it had, probably some kind of flavor to it, and it was a throat suppressant, cough suppressant. And anyway, so he went. He would go into his charges into the, this is pre-dugout days. They would just have a bench basically, and he would give a pep talk to his ball players and say, what you've got to do is you've got to take one of those lozenges before every game. And that will help us win. Well, you know what? They won half their games. So the throat lozenge, the Rochester Hop Bitters, who only lasted that 1 year, won half their games. So the lozenge worked half the time, I guess. I love that nickname. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, that was back in the days of there's so many minor league teams. I remember getting baseball cards when I was a kid. And, the rookie league, that's one of my favorites. There was an Elvira, I think. There was a New York league and Southern and North, there was everywhere. Yeah. And I have only seen one minor league game, and it's a different world altogether. It was
Absolutely.
It was in Madison, Wisconsin. It was Double A, the Oakland team, and some other franchise. I forget who it was, but it was loaf of bread night. So at the end of the night, you show your ticket, go into the school bus, redeem it for a loaf of bread. I thought, oh man,
Oh, that's
this
great.
is baseball. This is Americana.
Yeah.
This is great. And the bread was, it doesn't matter if the bread was any good, but I don't know who won, but I remember loaf of bread night. I don't know if they ran out of bread, but there it was in the school bus.
Loaf of bread night. I love that. That's fantastic.
You should
Hey,
have.
Tom, you mentioned
You should let.
Mathewson being injured in the '08 replay.
Yeah,
I was
right.
wondering how your game handles injuries. Is there
Yes. So
like how do you determine the duration, and are certain players more apt to be injured, that type of thing?
yes, there are. So I tried to use some probability statistics there. Obviously pitchers are the most vulnerable to be injured. Catchers are probably second. And when Mathewson got hurt, the game is designed so that you could bring up a minor league player to take his place from those reserved two pitchers, and or as the case for that particular team, they just threw a relief pitcher in there and he pitched a whole bunch more games that he normally would have. But back in those days, relief pitchers weren't really a thing either. So if you were a man, you went and played, you pitched the whole game. And it was considered probably sissified to be taken out of a game. They didn't take pitchers out of a game for getting hit hard. They did not do that. They just, well, you're in. You got 9 innings. You got 10 if it goes 10. So that's what you did. And they called them change pitchers way back in the day because they were much rarer. And, if you needed a change or a pinch, as Mr. Mathewson's book is called, Pitching in a Pinch. Great book, by the way, about pitching.
Well, one thing about playing those old dead ball teams, it's really easy to manage your pitching staff.
Absolutely.
Just let the guy in there. I mean, who's going to take
staff.
Christy Mathewson out? Why would you ever take him out?
3-man staff, if that. Sometimes two.
Yeah.
Sometimes two.
They had much smaller rosters back in that era, right? The dead ball era.
Yeah, exactly. Smaller roster. But if you read Ed Acorn's book, 59 and 84, they had a one-man staff.
Yes, they did.
They had a one-man staff.
Or
And
they
the
wear
stories
him
about
down,
that
too.
guy, Old Hoss Radburn, are absolutely beyond belief. This guy pitched so many games that he couldn't even eat. He couldn't even pull the fork up to his mouth and eat. So
Yeah.
he would have starved to death had teammates not helped him a lot. And I mean, just an incredible guy. If you look at the old time pictures of the team that he was on, the Providence team, he's flipping the bird in 1884. Who knew? Yes, he's flipping the bird.
In the team
If you
photo.
don't believe me, pick up David Nemec's book. You can see it in there too. But it's in Acorn's book and it's in David Nemec's book. And anybody that's writing about the 19th century has probably seen. I saw that many years ago and I said, is he doing what I really think he's doing? Yes, he's giving the bird in the team picture. So,
No wonder all the old pitchers, they look so grumpy.
But he wanted to pitch. He didn't want anyone else to pitch.
What had happened was they had a 2-man rotation. The other guy jumped the team in the middle of the season.
Right.
And they had a rivalry the whole first half of the season. In fact, Radburn had went on a spurt where he was pouting and he was laying drunk and showing up half hungover for his starts because he was pouting over how well the other guy was doing. The other guy jumps the team, and Radburn comes to him and says, listen, I will offer to pitch the rest of the season if you give me free agency at the end of the year. And so the owners were about ready to shut down the team. So they said, well, sure. I mean, it's either this or shut up shop. And so they did. He pitched the rest of the year, won them the pennant and everything, and he got free agency. He went to Boston the next year. So,
well, he would be the outlier because during those reserve clause days, that was
they
a
wouldn't. That
really
was a
hard
big
thing to
thing. That's
do.
why he had to negotiate. That's why he had to do it.
Right,
He had him
exactly. That
over a
was really
barrel. He
hard.
had him over a barrel.
Well, what
And
was the rest of his career like after that? Did he blow his arm out?
close to it. Well, see, he pitched a bunch the year before too. Not he was still a 2-man rotation, but he pitched a whole lot the year before. And if I remember right, he had a few good seasons after that, sort of, little better than average, but he never pitched a whole lot of innings. And he lasted about 5 more years, but he wasn't never the same. He wasn't never the same.
Of
Well, I
course.
think it got him in the Hall of Fame.
Well, yeah.
That season alone got him in the Hall of Fame, probably.
Yeah.
Well, as far as 19th century goes, if you want to research and write, I mean, you have so much material to find out about, and you can make some really tremendous books and stories. I mean, the period newspapers of the time are really amazing. The Sporting News came out in '86 on St. Patrick's Day in '86, and they handled St. Louis affairs during the Chris von der era, and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the St. Louis, there was another St. Louis paper, and I forget the name of it right now, the Globe Democrat. Those were the 3 main sources. And all of the newspaper reportage is just stunning and astounding at that time of what you can find out. Lots of personal stuff, too, about who was doing what to whom, and who was drinking, and who had malaria, which was a buzzword for a bender, really. If you had malaria, that meant you were drunk off your rear end.
And that was a major problem. Drinking was a major problem for him.
Huge. Yes.
And in fact, some of the teams would have hire private detectives to sort of follow around and try to keep leashes on the bigger drunks, but it generally was a losing cause. It was a losing cause.
Spalding sicked his people, and Anson didn't like it as well.
Right. Yep.
Yep.
It's just such a different ballgame in 19th century, with all the different rule changes, and from year to year, the number of balls and strikes, the distance, the pitcher's mound was moved back, I think 1893. So it's just,
well, in the beginning,
I guess it's difficult to make comparisons, right?
Pitchers weren't even pitching as far as deception goes. They were pitching merely to throw the ball up there and to put the ball in play. It had nothing to do with deception until Candy Cummings came along and had his curveball, and then everything kind of evolved into, well, we're going to pitch and then try to get the guy out. And it was just a complete sea change in the way baseball was.
You used to be able to call a high or a low pitch.
Exactly. The batter could call it. Right.
All the way until, I want to say, the early 1880s, maybe. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's correct. So, that was a massive change when the pitchers had deception, and they were trying to get players out with curveballs and different types of fastballs, curveballs, and different mix and match of the speeds and all of that. So
was Cummings also the first one to throw? Was Cummings also the first one to throw overhand? I mean, somebody had to be the first one, because they were throwing underhand, and somebody thought.
No, it was against the rules. But what happened? I think they could throw shoulder height and below. Well, the problem was it was very hard to enforce. And are you talking about here? Are you talking about here? Are you talking about here? And, and you can think about it now, with even the underhand guys now, you'll have some that's sort of close. You have some that's dragging the ground, so on and so forth. And finally, they just sort of give up. And the main thing was, once pitchers started trying to throw hard, then it was a matter of, I want to try to throw as high up as I can, generally. And so finally they just gave up, and it was either 1884, 1885. I think it was 84 when they allowed them to go overhand and really throw hard. And and then it slowly progressed from there.
Yeah, you got to wonder what a hard thrower was. I understand they figured Walter Johnson threw 91 or 92. And in those days, they paced themselves. So he probably was able to bring it a lot harder than that when he wanted to. But the ball they had, especially in the dead ball area, you could do anything you want with it. They throw it around the infield, they kick it,
and it'd be dark. That's the other thing people forget about is it would be scuffed up and brown from the dirt. So it'd be dark.
Absolutely.
And you were playing in twilight by the end of the game. So, and
you
actually
had
the Ray
ball,
Chapman,
the Emery ball, the spit ball. I mean, they would put anything in that ball to make it.
The Ray Chapman, the pitch that killed. That was really a turning point because that was
absolutely.
They threw the ball. They threw the old balls out. They eliminated the spit ball. That was all that same answer.
Oh yeah, Ray Chapman never saw the ball.
No, exactly. That's why they did that.
Yeah, well, Mays was throwing underhand. I think I didn't see it coming out of his hand. And
Carl Mays was an underhand pitcher. He was. Yeah, you can see some YouTube clips of him.
The unbelievable thing about that, they didn't make helmets mandatory until 1951 or something.
Right.
So this guy gets hit with a pitch and he gets killed. They go, well, what are the odds of it's going to happen again?
It hit him so hard, Mays thought it hit the bat and he fielded it and threw it first base.
He fielded it.
Yeah.
Well, Carl Mays is not the most liked man in baseball.
No, that's true. Even without that incident. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So I have a close encounter with a major league.
One fatality in the major league. That's what's amazing to me, that there's only been one.
Right.
You know,
in the major leagues. I think there have been some in the minor leagues, but in the major leagues.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're talking about your Frank Howard. I had a close encounter with Freddie Patek.
Oh,
in
yes.
1968, I was 16, right. And three of my friends, there was this grocery store up the way that ball players used to frequent because it had great meat, of all things. Al's a meat market. So we're three strapping 16-year-olds were pretty big. And here, Freddie Patek's in the store buying stuff. He's only about 5'4".
Yeah.
Said, hey, Freddie, how are you doing? Can you give us a ride? Sure. We had nowhere to go. So we got in the car and said, well, take us to such and such. And he was a great guy. He had a Cadillac. It said either Freddie or Patek on his license plate. And yeah, he was really short. I mean, it's hard to believe. I think he's only about 5'4". Yeah, he played the first couple of years with Pittsburgh. And he took us up the way and dropped us off. There you go. And nothing else.
And there's a great picture with Patek and Frank Howard together.
I've seen that.
I mean, it's hard to believe those are two human beings.
That's a great photo.
In the same game, you know. It looks
that's funny to think about.
Yeah, it's just bizarro.
It's like the Altuve and Aaron Judge photo, right?
What's that?
Jose Altuve and Aaron Judge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But this was even more pronounced than that.
But that's the great thing about baseball is you can be an all-star at 5'4", or what Altuve 5'6" or 5'5", and we're 6'7". We're 6'7". So
I don't know. Do you think that's true these days? I mean, you think Ron Guidry would have been drafted today, all 160 pounds or whatever he is, and they look for these huge, humongous guys to throw a 5.5-ounce baseball, whatever it is. It doesn't make any sense. They're becoming to me like machines rather than human beings. And if I see another guy come in and throw 98, okay, well, that's nice. But give me Juan Marichal. I'd rather watch Juan Marichal or Louis Tiant pitch.
I'm convinced that's why they have the injuries. Is the body's not designed to withstand the torque. Think about it, guys. Have you ever heard of an oblique injury 20 years ago? No. There was no such thing. They're generating that much torque on the swing that they're literally loosening the midsection muscles up. And same thing with arms. It's past the. Now the question is, how's that going to get dialed back? Because you always have the incentive to win the next game, win the next season, whatever. But I have to wonder if availability being the most important ability, if somewhere somebody's going to wise up and say, I want leaner guys. Seriously, I want leaner guys. I want people who look like baseball players. You know?
Well, I agree. I don't think we're going to see another Greg Maddux the way things are going.
Unless somebody tries that, thinking it's important to be able to field the same guys for several seasons, get multiple seasons and more availability, more longevity out of them. That's what I wonder.
Well, you got kids going in with Tommy John now in high school, in college ball, and some of them are already having their two in the same arm. It's
they're already getting the gun. They're already doing the what was Mike Marshall's kinesiology studies and that kind of thing on them in high school. Video, so that's the thing is there's definitely great tools to increase velocity, bat speed, those kind of things. But yeah, I sort of have to think that we're reaching physical limits on that stuff.
Well, I played baseball up through high school. I had nobody show me mechanics. Nobody showed me how to hit. It was just all instinct, not one. And today, I don't know, high school teams must have hitting coaches and pitching coaches. We had two coaches. We had the head coach and the other guy who knows what he did. I'm not sure what he ever did. And we just learned on the fly. And I think that sandlot ball is all but gone. I can't imagine anybody doing that. And that's the most fun I ever had playing with sandlot ball. Make up everything as you go along. It was great.
Youth baseball is so expensive now. That's the thing gets me. What they call traveling ball or whatever.
Anybody have any other questions about the book or the game? I'd like to get back to that topic again.
We gotta wrap it up soon here, guys.
Sure, absolutely, Mr. Wendling.
I've got one more about the game.
Sure. Go ahead.
Do you have different charts for different eras, like for the dead ball era? So there's fewer home runs, there's more triples.
Absolutely.
That type of thing.
Absolutely. Cool. The game takes into account all of the. The charts are made based on probabilities. I just use the raw data, and what comes up comes up. If there was a guy in Pittsburgh in 1912 named Owen Wilson, and he played in Forbes Field, which if you hit a ball in the gap, you can run for 3 days, And Wilson hit 36 triples that year. Nobody's ever even come close to that. Not even 30, not even probably 25. And that was that weird outlier year. So if I have a 1912 chart of Owen Wilson, he's going to have a tremendous probability of hitting triples.
No, I came in late. Is this a game of yours that you're talking about?
Yes, it's 80s baseball. I designed a game, and it's available on my website on Pocal Press, POCOLPRESS.com. It's $20 for one season, and the game engine and the dice and everything. And
would you repeat that? I didn't hear it. What is it?
Okay, the game is called 80s Baseball because it was designed during the 1980s, and it has all 260 80s teams. Plus, it has many other historical seasons.
If I do a search on 80s baseball, will I find it?
It would probably link to my website, which is www.pocalpress.com. That's P as in Papa, OCOLPRESS.com.
Yeah, I've got it up there. I just put it in the chat. Yeah, I was looking. I found it while we were talking, and there it is. Yeah,
it's right there at the top of the page, and you can pick your the season that you would like, and there you go.
Okay. Yeah, I'll look into it for sure.
The game uses 2 D10 dice, so all the probabilities are exactly identical from the number 01 through 99, or the number 1 through 100, depending on which way you want to count them. But they're 0 and 100 are the same number in this particular game. So it's not like, you roll sevens, and that would be craps. And that's what, 25%. There's no 2d6s. There's 2d10s. One's the tens dice, one's the ones dice. And everything being equal, you look at the charts and you can figure out your probabilities and see who's going to do well and see who's probably not going to do as well.
And two of your books are right there on that main website page too.
Now, all the other books are all there as well. I've written several other books myself on baseball, 19th century style. So, and plus I've published about 100 some odd books total. So there's other books from other people on baseball, on war stories, on all kinds of other topics. So that's what I do.
Are you planning to go to the convention in Minneapolis this year?
No, but I'm going to the 19th century conference in Cooperstown in next month. I have been to several of the annual SABRs, but I'm not going to many this year unless I don't know. I'm probably just too lazy to do it, but I am going to Cooperstown because those guys are really crazy. I mean, the 19th century guys. I've got to, I don't know if Mr. Wemley wants to cut me off, but I've got to tell you a story about how crazy the 19th century guys are, how into it they are. Well, so we're sitting in a bar the first night, right? Everybody's ordering their chicken wings or whatever they're getting. And I'm sitting there and I don't drink or smoke. So I'm kind of the outlier and I'm getting my hamburger or whatever. And this one guy, who I've never seen before, he looks at the group. There's like 20 of us sitting at the table and he goes, "Do you know what happened when the devil went against God in a baseball game?" And we look at this guy like, this guy's like stark raving nuts. What are you talking about? He goes, "Yeah, well, back in the day, I think it was in the 80s, there was this pitcher named Jim Gott, who pitched for Toronto, by the way, back in the day. Jim Gott, and Gott in German means God." And of course, the Minnesota Twins, for all the Twins fans out there and the Mets fans out there, they had a second baseman named Tim Tuffle. But in German, that's pronounced Tim Teufel. So that Teufel in German means the devil. And in fact, the devil batted against God on how many times was it? 9 separate occasions in the major leagues. And the devil got 2 hits, including a double. So the devil hit 222 against God, and you can look it up. I kid you not. But that's the kind of fan, crazy fans that you get. Not necessarily 19th century, but yeah, SABR's a very eclectic group, to say the least. We are all of those guys. So
Tuffle must not have been very good because everybody hit God. As I recall.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, love that story. It was just such a funny event that happened 2 years ago, April, when I first heard that.
At some point, I may have to go to that one at Cooperstown.
Yeah, it's great. It's just, it's 19th century, guys. So we're all, in that particular era talking about old Hoss Radburn and Arlie Latham and Chris Van der Ahe and all of those incredible personalities from back then.
That's great stuff. We have what do we have? Four Twins Hall of Famers at the convention this year.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
Carew, Cott, Lilevan, and Oliva.
Yeah, wow.
Well, I'm from Minneapolis, so if I don't go, they're
well, there's a guy here in Punxsutawney that played ball with Rod Carew in the minor leagues way back in the 60s.
Oh, you live in Punxsutawney?
I live in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, Groundhog Town.
I grew up in Pittsburgh, so I know Punxsutawney.
Oh yeah, everybody knows about that. Punxsutawney Phil, who lives in the library, lives down in the local library. Kids come in, they feed him, and he just kind of pops out every year at this insane event, which is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. And highly recommended if you got to put it on your bucket list. It's 10 minutes of complete nonsense, but 3 hours before the thing even starts, they hold up this crazy groundhog and people cheer and, Phil, will you marry me? And all that. It's insane. And people come literally from all over the world to see this.
Say, has Bill Murray ever showed up?
Bill Murray did show up, yes. Although the movie was not filmed here, was filmed in Woodstock, Illinois. And Bill Murray showed up at the local hotel, and they had a big soiree back in the movie premiere back in those days. But yes, he did show up here, and there's posters and all kinds of things at the Historical Society of Bill Murray and the gang of the
so something else, speaking of Bill Murray and the convention, bringing them together, former owner of the St. Paul
Saints.
St. Paul Saints.
Yeah, St. Paul Saints. They sold it last year, but they've added a game within the conference to see the Saints as well as the Twins.
Oh.
So, for me, I definitely going to the games because I don't get many games up here in God's country. But yeah, convention looks good. Looks like they're making some changes this year. I think they've given more time to have discussions like we're having right now.
That's great.
More coffee times, etc., is what they're talking about, and they've been able to keep the registration on the low end, they say. So
yeah, does that mean that there's less presentations and more, like you say, coffee clatches?
Well, I noticed the one big dinner they have doesn't seem to appear on the agenda this year.
Oh,
so,
the banquet.
I'm not sure. The presentations, they go through their own vetting process, etc. Derek and I, for our meeting for this, we're not ready to announce it yet, but we may have a speaker, somebody we've had on who did a lot of early computer games, etc., to come talk. But if we get more than one speaker, we'll just tell them to book us twice. I have no issue with that. So, but we're all excited. I'm planning to be there at this point. So, and I know Derek is bringing his son who needs a haircut and a shave.
Yes.
And I tell him,
no, definitely. I can't miss out on Carew is my favorite player, so I can't miss that that session. But looking forward to
the magic wand of Rod Carew.
Well, if Burt Blyleven's going to be there, there's going to be a lot of laughing because he is a funny guy.
Really funny. Yes.
Yeah. And 10 times it took him to get into the Hall of Fame. That's an absolute travesty.
And he finally won a World Series with the Pirates.
He won two. He won out here too. In '87 was the Twins.
Oh, right. I forgot about the '87. Yeah, he won in '79 with the Pirates, and then in '87 with the Twins. He was back with the Twins.
Maybe the best curveball I've ever seen. Remarkable. Just remarkable.
All right, guys. Well, I want to be cognizant of everybody's time here. Tom, I really appreciate you coming on.
You're welcome.
I'm sure everybody will be checking out your books and your game. We'll be sure to throw your website up on our follow-up where we share the link to the meeting and everything. So,
and we'll put it on X as well,
which
is formerly known as Twitter.
Oh, you're going to put it on the X? I thought you were going to put it on YouTube.
Oh, the video will
be on YouTube.
Yeah, okay. But we'll share this
on YouTube. But we have a Facebook page and a Twitter page that will.
Great!
We'll send everybody to those things.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. And anyone who wants to contact me at any time for anything, feel free to contact me. I can give you my phone number, or I have a Facebook page where I'm actually covering the 57 American League and 80s baseball. Every couple days I post about, what's going on in the season. And you can read about the 80s baseball game on the Local Press website as well.
What's the Facebook? Is there a group, or where are you sharing that?
It's just a website called 80s Baseball. If you go into Facebook, it's there, and there's a few graphics, but mostly it's a little analysis, a little write up of what happened that particular day or who's doing what in the standings. And I posted today about the games I'd played today, and I'll probably post every 2-3 days. There's an update. And after this, we go to the National League, and then we do the World Series. No playoffs, thank goodness. Real baseball, 8 teams, 22 games apiece, 11 on the home, 11 on the road. It's symmetrical, it's incredible, and that's the way it has to be. Unfortunately, we have these uneven, unbalanced schedules. It's nonsensical. I'm the 8-team league guy, 1901, 1960. That's baseball. That's the real baseball.
I'm still not sure what league Milwaukee's in. I keep losing track.
Well,
are they in the National League or the American League?
They're in the National.
Okay. I haven't, because there used to be a big rivalry of the Twins. And, I kind of, anytime after 1991, I kind of just, it doesn't interest me that much.
I'll be honest. I missed the announcement when they moved Houston over.
Oh, Houston, sure.
I'm like, what the heck are they doing here?
No.
Because I think those were the lost years of the Jays, the Riccardi years. So,
well, how many teams are
there? Everybody.
Okay.
I've had a lot of fun, a lot of laughing tonight, and I gotta go hang out with some guys who knows 1890s baseball, because if they're gonna make me laugh, it's always fun.
Oh.
All right, guys. I appreciate it. Tom, thanks again. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
And check us out. I think our next meeting is April 30th with Derek Beckner. He does the Status Pro Advanced. So
cool.
Okay.
Very good.
All right, guys. Well,
bye now.
Take care. Yep.